Hi, everyone. Welcome to GMAT Club's presentation of the day. My name is Jen Turchnell, and I'm with Aringo, and we're here to talk about Duke Fuqua. And we're going to talk about everything you need to know. And I have Anastasia Suik with us, and she is a Fuqua alum, and she'll be sharing her insights about her experience at Fuqua. Excellent. So while we wait, I'll have, if you guys want to just kind of join us in the chat, we'll be checking that as we go along and just, tell us where you're coming from today. We'd love to give you a shout out on the chat. And then also don't forget to like and share this video with your friends as we learn a lot more about Duke Fuqua today. All right. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and get started in just a few seconds. Looks like we're still waiting for people to come online and to share more about who they are. So again, just go ahead and make your comments in the comment box and we'll be answering them along the way. So, as I mentioned, my name is Jen T, and I am the CEO of Aringo MBA Admissions, and we help clients with getting into top MBA programs across the globe. So, the ways that we usually help our clients are, helping them with what's called a full school package, which is a comprehensive, unlimited package with strategy, working one on one with a consultant like Anastasia, and then also having experts review your entire application before you submit it, interview prep, all that you need for an MBA admissions assistance for your applications. And you can always check out our website to see our statistics and see how well we do compared to the actual admit stats of these schools. But you'll see we're pretty darn good at what we do. All right. So again, I'm Jen T with Aringo, and I'm the CEO of the program. And I have with us today Anastasia. Anastasia, will you please introduce yourself?
Sure, Jen, thank you, and everybody glad to be here to share the experience. Anastasia Solovanyuk, class of 2018. That's when I graduated from Fuqua, so I started in 2016. Before that, I had startup experience in education and energy, and sort of was looking for an opportunity to take my career further in the energy sector, and was able to do that with Fuqua. I do now work for an energy company, utility company in the Northeast. For me, that's a big takeaway. I was able to leverage my education at Fuqua to fulfill my career goals, as well as have a fantastic experience while I was there.
Awesome. And then Anastasia, you still live in North Carolina, is that correct?
That's right. I was actually very surprised. I was an international student, so I'm Ukrainian, and I haven't had a chance to visit the campus before I enrolled. But when I arrived on campus, I was just like, oh, this is much better than I expected. I loved it to an extent that I intentionally stayed. Actually, my dream company for after graduation, the North America headquarters was in Care, which is just down the road. The area is fantastic. So I'm still here, 5 years later.
Awesome. Exciting. And we'll dig into that a little bit more later as well. All right. So a quick, summary of what we're going to be talking about today is we'll go through some of the numbers and facts about Fuqua, and then we'll talk about the curriculum and how you decide if, this is the right choice for you, if it's a good fit. We'll talk about the different aspects of student life, everything that you're going to have to do while you're on campus of those 2 years. We'll talk about employment as well as recruiters are going to be on campus. And then afterwards, we'll kind of run through the application with some tips. But today there's going to be a lot of information shared on the screen, but we're going to be kind of at a high level talking about things. But I wanted to make sure, as you go through and rewatch this later on, don't forget to share it and like it so you can come back and find it. And so you can always kind of come back and read a couple of details if you had questions specifically. But also, don't forget to ask us in the chat. All right. So Duke Fuqua is definitely one of the top MBA programs. It was ranked number 11 with Financial Times and the US News and World Report. So it's definitely one of the top programs to choose. Maybe not the Harvard, Stanford, or Wharton, but it's definitely like right there, either top 10 or top 15 consistently over the past 5 to 10 years, I believe. So, it's definitely a very amazing choice and experience where you get the best of both worlds of, being able to be in a rural campus, well, like a college campus, and be able to have all the access that you're looking for along with a brand name that carries. All right. So, again, kind of going through a couple of the statistics, the biggest thing to know is that it is a 2-year full time MBA. It does have the SIM certification to it, and it has between 375 to 400 students. That ranges a little bit based on year to year. And then the salary, again, like you're getting this huge benefit of, $160,000 average salary when you graduate. It is a highly international program. Sometimes, close to 47% of the students are international, so you're definitely going to gain that global perspective. And then the GMAT range, it went down just a little bit this year to include 670 all the way up to 760. And then GMAT or GRE scores are ranging from 306 to 330. Average years of work experience is 6 years, and 45% identify as female. So those are some really quick stats. Anastasia, did you have anything to add about your experience? Do you remember how many people were in your class?
That's a good question. I don't. It was like pushing the 400. I think that the class size in the last couple of years they've decreased it a little bit. So you definitely get a sort of smaller cohort experience where your classmates well. And that is reinforced through multiple structures that I'm sure we'll get in. But I think the diversity of it is a very important component of my experience, right? Like be on my C lead, and we'll get into that in a little bit, what that is. Two were like, fresh off the boat, kind of international students, if you consider myself that. And then another one, very strong international experience out of 7 people, right? So you really get that perspective. And the same with male-female diversity, right? It's a very good performance for a business school. So it provides for a diverse perspective, learn from the peers about their experience and how to position, how to move along your career and personally as well.
Awesome. Okay, so we'll talk, again at a high level about the curriculum at Duke. I think that the cool thing is that some of these really interesting courses are built into the core curriculum, and it's not necessarily like that you have to have that certification to be able to, be part of like an energy and environment class, or to be able to, take the class in health sector management. Those types of classes are things that people, are maybe interested in, but don't necessarily want a certificate or concentration in. And so it's great that they're available without having to take that deep dive. Hi, Ankit. Thanks for joining us today. Um, all right. So these again are the core courses and some electives, but the cool part is that you do get to take that deep dive into a concentration if you want to. So you can see there's a lot of different topics here. I feel like Anastasia, you might know about the energy and environment concentration. Anything to share there?
Um, so in broad perspective, I think Duke put a very strong foot forward in terms of their climate commitments and their commitment to the topic, and being a school where that is a very important topic. And Duke and Fuqua specifically is driving a lot of that, in addition to the Nicholas School, that is the School of the Environment. And Edge Seminar is, I'm not sure if is essentially an invitation class where industry professionals from different aspects and different parts of the industry come in and share their experience, their view of the industry, of the trends, etc. And that is something that was really useful and beneficial for me as I was, learning more about the sector, looking to continue growing there.
Excellent. And then there are some certificate options for you as well as, finance, the healthcare sector, and you can even do multiple combinations of concentrations and certificates. So that's really exciting that, you have a lot of different options to customize your curriculum to kind of fit your career and what you're looking to do once you graduate from the program.
And one thing to add, in terms of concentrations and what you brought up in terms of different opportunities, I think healthcare, just with the health system at Duke, Broad Duke, is a very strong concentration, and definitely something that people come to Duke for. Marketing is another strong area where Fuqua shines as well. So those are just like some of the areas that I think are particularly strong at Fuqua.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that healthcare is definitely one of the bigger, more up and coming kind of concentrations. I mean, it's been around for a while, but I think that, a lot of people think of like Wharton as one of the schools and maybe Darden, but like definitely Duke is a strong presence in the healthcare sector, the energy sector. There's a power company named after the school, or the school's named after the power company, some sort of name sharing there with Duke Energy or Duke Power. I can't remember exactly what it is, but there's a lot there, and I think that there's so many resources that make the curriculum even more relevant for candidates who are really interested in these specific sectors. um, all right. So we'll go on to kind of talk about, like, is Duke the right place for me? Of course, it is a top brand that you'll see across the globe. Um, it does have this STEM benefit. So if you are looking for additional OPT, definitely something you can look at. There are a lot of student clubs. I think that there are a few schools that are really into the student experience, and Duke is one of those. And so, I mean, Anastasia can definitely elaborate on that, but I think that like they are really focused on that. And so, if you're wanting to have a close knit experience, know everybody in your class, and have a close knit, I mean, like maybe healthy competitive experience, but not like I'm going to beat you for this job kind of, very competitive environment, um, then I think it could be a really great fit for you. Anything to add there, Anastasia?
Yes, I think that like student trend point is important. And when I reflect back on my experience, I think like a third academics, a third sort of that participation, like I was quite active in student, like in the life outside of the classroom, and a third, is the recruitment. So that's how I would think about like the time that I spent. And the team component and the you know there is I arrived, and I sometimes talk, I find myself being the mean person in the group, which I'm never like. Normally that's not the role that I play, if you will. The reinforcement there of we're all in this together, is very strong. So throughout the selection process, that's a strong bias, right? Sort of team orientation, focus on how you bring people up with you, and then throughout the program that is strongly reinforced. So some things that people refer to is, as Fuqua students interview, their performance gets better throughout the day because there's shared tips and tricks throughout, right? So that's something that is definitely felt and lived, and was another very welcome sort of revelation when I arrived on campus.
Yeah, that's awesome. And Anke, you had a question about like what are these unique aspects of Fuqua compared to other B schools? I think that we'll get into a little bit of that, but I think you can see that again, the one of the biggest fundamentals is like Team Fuqua, and you and your cohort are really in this together, and these are the people who are going to be your best friends for life. And when you graduate, you're not everybody's going to go their own way. You're going to have these relationships for a long time. um, so we'll kind of move on to the next part about, you know, teaching methods. I mean, I think this is pretty standard, so I wouldn't say that there's a lot of like uniqueness to this, but case studies is, a big part of the curriculum. Realistic simulations, research centers, experiential learning. There's a lot of acronyms here. So, Anastasia, help us out. Like, what are some of these learning opportunities?
Sure. So case study is pretty straightforward, right? I think that depending on the class, so for example, like operations, there you have like a little bit more of an sort of like gamifying aspect of it. But I wanted to highlight here also the experiential piece of that, because as far as I remember, everybody has had at least one of those, if not more than that, right? So FCCP is Fuqua Consulting Practicum, Student Consulting Practicum. KCI3 is more focused on nonprofits. SPM, not familiar, new venture courses. I'm assuming it's something with entrepreneurial to help not familiar gate. And Fuqua on board is essentially an opportunity to serve on the board of a nonprofit. And so a lot of people took advantage of that. And that was a very big, also important part of their academic experience and their learning experience. So definitely would recommend looking into it and taking advantage of that. With research centers, I think it mirrors a little bit the strength of the programs, right? So you have the EDGE Center, which is the Energy and the Environment Center. You have I believe it's called CASE, but sort of the social responsibility, sustainability type of focus. So there's a focused area where faculty concentrate and you can engage with the latest research, the latest knowledge, and the latest opportunities that are available either locally or globally as well.
Awesome. And then you have the student life component, right? Like you said, like it's broken up into thirds almost between academic, personal, student, and career. Maybe I added one in there because that doesn't equal up to three thirds. But so there's a lot of student clubs and activities to be part of. And I think, they can appeal to any side, right? The professional clubs would, relate to kind of concentrations, um, consulting types of like competitions, and then different affinity clubs or diversity clubs and activities like the outdoor club, the some sort of wine club, food club, like all that kind of stuff kind of plays in. But another cool part is this like service opportunities, because there's like a day in Durham, right? Anastasia, did you participate in that?
Yes, that's a required part of the orientation and goes to instill, like you have to be a good steward of the community that you are in, if you will.
Yeah. And then Abji, he posted about people are going through applications and, well, going through interviews if they submitted their round one application. So yes, do please ask us if you have any questions about your upcoming interview. All right. So this is something that Anastasia really wanted to talk about, and like it was fundamental as of her experience. So tell us about C Lead.
Yes. So CLEAD is a group of people. So the class is broken down into 6 sections, right? That's pretty standard. And then within those sections, you're assigned a C lead, and the latest size is 4 to 5 students. It's a magic. Nobody knows how it is assigned, and it's a big sort of secret. And yes, as I said, nobody knows. But those are essentially your people for the first semester, and that's 2 terms. And the reason they're so important is that when you come in, right, like one of the key experiences of a MBA program is the pressure that you're under, right? If you think about the thirds, right, the academic pressure, the professional pressure, and the social pressure, if you will. I'll put that all together. And you come in, you want to do all the things, and you have the requirements to do. And so this C lead is a way for you to figure out, how do I learn best with these people, right? So how do we assign tasks, knowing that this person is going to be out for recruiting this week, right? Like it's a very concentrated team experience that is forced on you, that creates what happens if somebody is not pulling their weight, either predictably or not. How do you account for that? How do you find a way to communicate and get your point across with people who are different from you, right? Like I would say at least 5 years of professional team experience is sort of crammed into those 6 months. And I would argue at the other side comes out, you come out a much stronger team player, able to work in organization, get work done in organization. So a very important component of, as Jen said, of my experience there.
Yeah, and then we'll kind of lead right into, tell us about Durham. Tell us about the experience of like what it's like there and
Yeah.
what made you stay.
Yes, for sure. Love talking about Durham, probably too much, because it is one of the fastest growing economic areas in the country. But it is part of the Research Triangle Park sort of conglomeration of cities, which includes Raleigh, Chapel Hill, and like the Cary area, if you will, and Durham. And Durham itself, so I'll start with Durham itself. There's, I would say, two distinct parts. There's the Duke part, right? And there's the city part. Because unlike a smaller college town, it's not all centered around Duke, right? There's a very distinct Durham culture. And that is really important to me in terms of like how the experience was defined, particularly after I stayed after graduation. It's I love the fact that you're within 10 minutes of parks and rivers and like hiking areas. You're so on the nature side, right? Like you're a couple of hours from the ocean, but you're also a couple of hours from like several national parks. It's really a beautiful area. There's also, it's not just nature, it's also sort of the cultural aspect because of the universities that are here. So you have Duke, you have UNC Chapel Hill, and you have NC State and North Carolina Central University. They bring a lot of world-class performers to the area that you wouldn't expect to see elsewhere, right? Like in an area of this magnitude, if you will. So that's the cultural aspect. I never felt sort of like, oh goodness, let me just get out and see a little bit of culture after spending a day in wilderness. That's the other piece, and then the sort of professional piece. As I said, one of the fastest economically growing areas in the country, with a lot of companies looking, either having a presence or looking to have more of a presence here. Some of the like bigger names is Google Fiber. Google has Google Fiber specifically is one of the key areas is Durham. Then you have Cisco, you have Microsoft, you have IBM's, obviously a lot of companies in the health sector are located here. So very strong economic activity that is promulgated, if you will, by the presence of like a lot of highly educated professionals, right? So companies want to take advantage of that, and so come here. So like from those three aspects, to me, it's just like a fantastic area, and the quality of life is great.
Yeah. So, I mean, like, let's take this as like a key piece of information. If you're applying to Fuqua or you're going through the interview process soon, I would definitely kind of research the economic industry and see how that correlates with your career goals and talk about that. Because, I mean, I don't think that, like, unless you're a local, you probably wouldn't know that Google Fiber is coming in, or that that they're on the horizon for having Apple come in as, like, with another headquarters. Like, there's a lot going on there that you can have play into your career goals and the questions that you ask and such, so that the school feels like the admissions committee is like, wow, you really did your homework and you're on top of it, and you know that we're going to be um, that this is, the school for you. All right. So
And I
let's
will add
get
just one point on that, Jen, in terms of like, that's what's driving the richness of the experiential opportunities here as well, right? Like if you had like a town of nothing, of two companies, that would be a very different opportunity to get involved with case I3, FCCP, like those type of opportunities. That's the strength of the area is what drives also partially the richness of those offerings.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome. Okay. So career management, I mean, we don't have to dive into the complete, you know, details of this, but just knowing that you have a career management center behind you that is going to help you through the actual um, application process. And I mean, Anastasia, stop me if I'm wrong, but this happens even before you get on campus for like orientation. You're starting to work on your resume and putting things together for the resume book. Tell us a little bit more about your recruitment process when you were looking for a job.
Sure. Yes. So MBA in big part, a huge part, the majority part perhaps is about, furthering your professional goals. And that's understood. It's not a secret, right? And so as Jen was saying, the work starts pretty early. You're given career management center presentations, like in the first couple of weeks that you're there. To your point, like resume workshops, sort of interview preps, drop-in hours, everything. I think there's like so there's two big routes, right, in terms of recruiting. On campus and off campus recruiting, that's how it's separated. And then there's like off campus, sort of like the big companies and like smaller companies, that's yet somewhat different, but together their makeup off campus. And on campus recruiting, like pretty straightforward, right? It's the like, maybe not household names, but names that are familiar to people who are looking to go into MBA degree, right? Like the companies that come, that there is a very specific recruiting process. There is a drop by resume date, interview rounds, et cetera, et cetera. So those are like consulting firms, tech firms, and banking, of course. So for that's the on-campus part. The off-campus part, you have to be a little bit more resourceful, right? But that's where the strength of the network comes in, right? Where you understand where people are in, and how they can support you in your search. And by people, I mean graduates. And CMC supports you throughout. As in many For many people, it was a combination of on-campus and off-campus search, right? So the moment you come in, like everybody tells you, you can't put all of your eggs in one basket, is how the expression goes. So I started with on-campus search and then transitioned to off-campus search. And that's how I got my both internship between my first and second year and the graduation offer. Those are the kind of big areas that you have to focus on as you search for post-graduation opportunities. And there's a lot of support and knowledge sharing from CNC, from your current students. I already alluded to the interview help and sort of like resource sharing that way. And then from the alums that came before you.
Excellent. And again, that's another part of that team Fuqua of like helping each other out. And so Anastasia kind of already alluded to this, but consulting, tech, financial services, and healthcare are kind of really the bigger parts of like where most people are going to be working. And Anastasia, I talk to a lot of people and they don't think that they realize that like Charlotte is considered like a huge financial city, but it's not far away. And that's why there's a big draw for finance at Fuqua as well.
Yeah. Well, Bank of America, I think, headquartered in Charlotte. I think that's like one of the reasons that that became. But it's actually a train ride away. It's very easy to get to. It's 2 hours.
Yeah. So again, like here are just again some statistics about like where most people are going. A lot of people do go into consulting, finance, general management, and marketing, and some general salaries that you can expect on the average. Now we'll move a little bit deeper and talk about some of the firms that are going to be recruiting there. So Accenture, BCG, Bain, like all these top names. And so you can see again how many people got hired. And I think like people oftentimes say like, oh, I have to go to an M7 school or else I'm not going to get into an MBB. But you can see from here that over 50 people were hired as consultants with an MBB firm, which is amazing. And then you move into tech, obviously, some really big names with Amazon, Apple, Google, Microsoft. Again, like these are all kind of repeating a little bit more of what Anastasia had said before, but really big names here. And then, healthcare is maybe a little bit different. Anastasia and I were talking earlier, and she was talking about there's a big biotech kind of influence there as well. And so, yeah, anything to add here, Anastasia, about where your friends might have or where your colleagues might have gone?
I mean, I think what I would to your earlier point in terms of like, oh, is you start when you're applying if you have a very specific focus, right? You start with is the firm or the types of firms that I recruit that I want to go to, do they recruit on this campus, right? Because there's some that do and some campuses where MBB don't go and some that go. But as Jen said, the field is broader if that's your goal. So I mean, I'll just repeat, like there's like the BCG, the Bains, the Amazons, the Googles, the McKinseys, there's people who ended up in all sorts of places.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay, so next we're going to talk a little bit about the application process. So I don't know if we can do this, a show of hands or a thumbs up if you are applying to Fuqua in round 2 or you're in the interview process. Let us know and just kind of chime in on the chat and let us if you have specific questions. But we'll kind of breeze through the application. But I do want to touch on it because there's a really great component of the application that I want to chat on. So, Anki, you asked about Wednesdays are an off day for academic courses. What are the implications of this if it's true? Anastasia?
Yes, so that's true. Edge seminar actually was on a Wednesday, but that's unusual. But most it's a free day for classes. The implication of this is that you do your work on Wednesday. Like you're instead of being in a classroom, you get together with the people to like get your work done on for Thursday and Friday. That's one implication. Then there's the other one that like a lot of club meetings are on Wednesday, right? Like so if you're in the leadership of the club, that's when a lot of work happens. And the final implication is like recruiting implication, right? So like interviews might be scheduled for that day, either on campus or if a lot of people go to for banking, you might be flying up to New York on Wednesdays or occasional Wednesdays, not all Wednesdays. But yes, that is correct. And it's not a free day. It's definitely a busy day.
And that's interesting because a lot of MBA programs typically have classes Monday through Thursday, and Friday is like the off day. So it's interesting it's in the middle of the week.
Yes, I think the piece there, I don't know, right? Like how that reasoning is. I think that like team component and the campus component and the culture component is really important. So perhaps the thought was, like let's just make sure that like people don't have a habit of like piecing out for the 3-day weekend.
Yeah, I think a lot more productivity, it sounds like.
Yes, well, also, if you think about it, if you were trying to do Friday interviews, that happens in other schools, but what if somebody at your firm or consistently takes Fridays off, right? So that's also for recruiting, perhaps is a component.
Yeah. Awesome. Thanks for answering that question. Thanks, Anki. Okay, so the application pretty straightforward. So Fuqua does not waive the GMAT or GRE at this point, so have to take those exams. They are accepting the GMAT focus, so that's good to know. They have an application fee, but they do have a lot of opportunities for waivers. And actually, there's like I can't bring it up right now, but if you go onto their website, they have like a page. I think it's within the application where you can see opportunities for waivers, and sometimes they even give them away in GMAT club sessions. So definitely worth participating in their recruitment efforts and getting $225 for free. So then, yes, they do also accept the executive assessment. So thanks, Diane for sharing that. So application, pretty straightforward. You want your resume. There are 3, 4 essays, depending on who you are or like what you have to share, then the letter of recommendation. And you do have the opportunity for endorsement, which we'll get to in just a second. And then it does require an interview. I know that we've already kind of passed technically like round 1 or early admission or early admit for Fuqua, but they definitely also have that as part of their process. So if you're watching this and you're wanting to apply maybe next year, you do have the opportunity to sign up for an interview during their early action round before you actually submit your application. So pay attention to those dates and all that has to go with that. So to be considered a strong candidate for Fuqua, um, I think that the biggest thing is that you are really, you know, explaining to the committee why you're a good fit for them. They want to know that you're going to be enriched by your peers, but you're also going to be enriching and teaching them from your experiences, your unique perspectives. And you also have to have that belief in diversity and that everybody has a different sort of story to share and experience, and to be able to open, accept, and learn from that. And then also demonstrate your competency, character, and purpose, as this says, but essentially, Duke has a very rigorous program. So you want to make sure that you're showing to them that you're ready for that. So Anastasia was actually also a campus ambassador, and you did some interviews. So anything else to share about this?
Well, just to reiterate in terms of like fit, I think that's really important. It's really important to show that you're intentional about like your choice, right? Like, and why Fuqua is the right place for you there. And otherwise, it's your interviews can be with a second year student, can be with AdCom, can be with the Alum. And there it's like pretty straightforward in terms of like, okay, the items on the slide, what are your leadership skills? What are your how do you present yourself to the world? What's your impact that you've had? Those are kind of the straightforward areas, but in interview, you just like it's a conversation between two people at the end of the day, and showing that fit, not only in application but in the conversation, is going to be also important.
Awesome. And Dane has a question about the new family essay asks to speak about Fuqua contributions, but the community essay does as well. Do you just focus on the family background one on contributions that stem from background? So I think that this is, um, sorry, I might have this on here, this essay, but I'm not sure. But we can also kind of go back to this. But it's kind of a two different types of questions. One is like kind of what's the influence of your family on you, and like how you're going to how how that shaped you and who you are. And the other one is, I think, a little bit more to talk about like how you pay that forward. I don't know if Anastasia, you know about this question in the current application.
No, family essay is new. I think I would concur in the sense that what family in various aspects, right? Like what are important things. So that's like more perhaps like also values, sort of what is important to you. How do you live your life? What are your sort of guiding principles, if you will? And then sort of contribution is like how do you apply those? How do you live those through?
Yeah, and I'm so sorry. I won't skip ahead, but if it comes up in this presentation again, I'll definitely make sure we talk about it specifically. But so one thing that's really unique about the Fuqua application is that they do ask for these 25 random facts, which again I think really ties into the whole Team Fuqua and wanting to get to know you specifically. And I don't think that there's any other school who's even got anything close to this. My typical breakdown that I share with clients is to, maybe do one third personal, like things that are about you, um, maybe one third academic ish, and one third professional. So you want to make sure you have this like balance and this mix of who you are, and you're showing all perspectives. Any other insights to share on this, Anastasia?
I so um, I think of it as well as sort of an opportunity to highlight different aspects of who you are, right? Because when you have a topic like a challenge or whatever what you have, it's like an experience and it's like very focused. But here it's almost like how diverse you are, like, and from the experience perspective. So I think that thinking about starting with, okay, who do I think as I am as a person? What are the defining characteristics of me? And what are the proof points of those? I think is a good place to start. And that can come through, in your personal life and how you engage with your community, and how you engage with your work and, sort of hobbies that you pick, et cetera, et cetera. But it's essentially, to me, it's a test of how well can I describe myself without describing myself.
Yeah. It's always like an interesting exercise. I almost tell everybody to come up with 30 to 35 points, to kind of get a bunch in there so that you can start to whittle them down, or have, a friend or a consultant help you with weeding through which ones are going to, add more to your profile and show more of who you are. The other option is to, maybe sit with, the 30 plus options, and then go and write your other essays, and then feel like, man, in these essays I didn't get to share this specific part about who I am, and I feel like it's a big part. So I want to make sure I include that in the 25 things so that they know this about me. So I think that that's, the best way to kind of approach it, is make sure that you feel like all parts of you are expressed in this application, because that's what Fuqua wants. They don't want, you know some stodgy, boring fluff. They want to get to know the real you.
And one final point of that, like, it's not resume bullet points, right? I think that came through, but just like to reiterate that, it's if you will write about your professional achievements, it's more like why did it matter to you? Why did you do that? Right? Like it's more the next level of conversation. It's not like why it is important to you. You have, for every point you should think through, why am I sharing this? That, like, the random is perhaps mostly, it's not random. It's random in the sense that they're not connected all to each other, but they have to be very deeply connected to you.
Right. And With that, I mean, I do have kind of a list of do's and don'ts. Again, you're more than welcome to save and like and share this presentation. Please give us a thumbs up. But come back and read through these points of like what you should or shouldn't do. And there's a lot of different things that you can include. Um, the I have a don't list as well. It's not an essay. Avoid repeating what they already know about you. um, like Anastasia said, it's not a bullet point. And I also think that you don't want to go back too far, right? Unless it was a fundamental thing that shaped who you are. I've, been in Taekwondo since age 5, and it's something that's carried throughout my entire life and has taught me about balance and blah blah blah. Like that that can work. But like when I was age 5, I got my first, my first belt. Um, what does that really mean to an admissions committee? So, as long as you have something to add to it, perfect. But I wouldn't reach back too far unless there's like a good story that leads into who you are. Okay, so then, so this is, essay number 2 is about Fuqua community and you and how you bring those together. So this is really your opportunity to talk about um, how you are going to give back to the Fuqua community through clubs, activities, sharing, more in the classroom. Like if you have, a really dynamic career in energy and many other people don't, and they want to get into that sector or sustainability, then you being able to share that in the classroom is amazing. Or like let's say that you taught English in China before you started your Fuqua adventure. Like that's something you want to be able to share because you've had those cultural experiences that you can bring up during the classroom. Anything else to kind of add there, Anastasia?
I think it's the first sentence is really important. The culture of engagement, right? It's not just about, oh, I'm interested in this. I think that's the biggest point. This is how I'm going to engage with this, right? Like this is how I'm going to build on what's there, make it different, make it better. But it's more than, oh, I'm curious about, whatever, tea, and so I'll be a member of tea club if there is one. I'm just making stuff up over here, but it's that how you're going to contribute piece that needs to come out quite strongly.
Yep. And then I think that this is a great kind of bullet point to sum up everything. You need to do your research, be authentic, and be concise, right? Like be able to communicate what you feel like you're going to contribute on campus. All right. So next is the short essay question. What are your goals? And this is, your opportunity to show again the research of, this is where I want to work, this function, this, company or company like. I think that a lot of the times MBA candidates will write, I want to work in MBB, you know, but that's not always going to happen. MBB is so ultra competitive. The admissions committee wants to know that you're okay if you don't get MBB, like you'd still be like tier 1. So maybe consider some other, you know, consulting firms that have your perspective and say like I'd like to work for, as a management consulting in MBB or EY Parthenon or something like that, right? Like give them some specifics, but also show that you're open. And then again, how you're going to get to your long-term goal, and then what Duke is going to do to help you get where you want to be. And I think that that's a good way to kind of make sure you're sharing that so that they can say, there's a good tie-in to why Duke is the right choice.
And just one
Go ahead.
thing there quickly. I think it's pretty common for people to go into MBA wanting to switch careers. That's fine. I think this question also is more than just your like wants and needs. It's also an indication of your maturity and sort of like, you don't go into MBA immediately after. Most people don't immediately after undergrad. You have 6 years of experience, 6 years of lived experience, have some maturity. Like, how are you thinking about like what you're going to do in the world, right? So if you want to switch careers from like teaching to tech, which friends have done, how are you going to leverage? Like explain, right? Like this is like these are the skills that I would like to leverage to transition from this and that, in addition to the MBA, etc. So it's important, like the point that Jen talked about, thoughtfulness and optionality and realism, right? Like there's many ways that you can make a contribution in the world beyond going to MBB, right? Like that's one great way to do so. But this question to me also speaks to maturity of what do I want to accomplish professionally, and how do I want to spend my time there?
Excellent. Thanks for contributing that. Okay, so I have one more slide, and Kate, we're gonna get to your interview question. I promise that'll be next. Okay, so the other thing I wanted to mention about applications is that Duke does allow for you to get endorsement letters from current students and alumni, and there is an endorsement form to formally go through and submit that. So. um, so, this is something really exciting for you to build this community and to show you've done your research and built these connections and that they're genuine if you get an endorsement letter back, for somebody to send that over to the admissions committee. Anastasia, have you written any endorsement letters?
I have after the fact, like after people applied. So it's also to support the application. But yes, that's a way to contribute. But they exist and people do write them. Yes.
Yeah, and I think that again, like if you worked with somebody who went to Duke and graduated or is a current student, that's another opportunity for you to show this, for them to be able to say like I worked with this person and we, were able to accomplish this huge goal, and or we worked through a really difficult time at a specific company or whatever it might be. The other thing is that there's a lot of events that you can attend. Like in November, they're having like a women's weekend. And so if you were to attend something like that or a diversity weekend, anything that you kind of attend with Fuqua and start to talk to current students and build this, mutual respect, that's an opportunity where you could ask for an endorsement too. So those opportunities are exciting, and I don't think that there's very many schools that allow that. I think like Duke and Cornell are like the most common that I've seen that from. So it's exciting to be able to do it. Okay, so now we're kind of at the end of the presentation itself and open to asking questions of Anastasia and I, and kind of help with anything that you felt like you didn't get to hear about during our presentation. And while you think of those questions and post them in the group chat, I'm going to talk about Anki. Like, well, actually, I'll ask Anastasia. Like, so Anki wants to know about what are some of the important points to cover in the tell me about yourself in the interview, that question. And is there a time limit that you usually stick to? And do you mention like work responsibilities or a few achievements? Any insights you want to share?
Sure. So the easy one is time limit. Like don't go much beyond 2 minutes. The recommendation. Then I think overall, right, like the how you think about your interview, it's part of your application, right? So it's going to go into your application, and as admission office reads through the application, they're going to pick up on certain things and like, okay, is Ankit, like Ankit is this kind of person, right? Like these are the spikes, if you will. And then like if you backtrack that to interview, in those 2 minutes, I think about like what motivates me, right? Like what are the things that matter to me? It's not a readout of resume, never for me, right? It's yeah, sure, like I'm very proud of this and this accomplishment that I've done. But these are also these other things. So it's it's an opening. Think of it as an opening to an interesting conversation that you want to have with somebody that you're meeting for the first time, and that you're hoping that they will be interested in you, right? So give them opportunities to understand something about you that is not only on your resume, that they have in front of them. So everything on the resume they have. So go the next level. Why did I do this? Like, what motivates me? It's again revealing some parts of you as a person that you would want to go into deeper in the conversation with the interviewer.
Excellent. And then, I mean, I think that sometimes, I mean, I know that this sounds like a little bit like cheesy or like gimmicky, but I think that you can kind of like talk about a brand of who you are, or kind of this common thread of, you know, what your experiences and how they, what they are and how they connect. Like for me, I've always been a people person from day one. In elementary school, I was, always the kid sitting out in the hallway because I was talking too much. That carried through and really helped me get amazing relationships in college, and now into my professional career. I was able to work in HR and navigate X, Y, and Z, and then this and this and this. And so, being able to figure out a way to tell the story that kind of brands you, like, oh, she's a people person and she wants to connect people. And this is, who she is and what she wants to do. So if there's a way to kind of connect that and build your story, then I think that's a really great opportunity. And I think like a lot of the times when somebody, I do a lot of profile evaluations, so you're more than welcome to sign up for one. The calendar link is on this page, but a lot of the times I'll have people, the first time I meet with them, walk me through your experience, like not your resume. Tell me about you and what you've done. And then I can easily see a thread of like, oh, you've always done jobs like this, or you've always been the person who does this type of thing. And, whether that's talking to me, Anastasia, or somebody else, like if somebody else is listening to you, they could probably identify some of this as well and help you with thinking of like, what's an easy way to kind of tell somebody about who you are in that question. Okay, so Anki, you have been the number one question asker. I love it. Anybody else have any questions? Anastasia, do you have any interview tips?
Prepare, and then on the day of just focus on like sharing who you are. I think that's like there is preparation part to the interview, right? It's that thinking, it's that reflection of who I am as a person. You should understand that, right? Like, what are the stories that I want to share? What are the proof points for showing who I am as a person? Like, so having that ready is important, but like during at that point, like focus on having a conversation, right? Like, do not try to memorize things. Like, you should have a couple of key points, key bullet points in your mind that, as an interviewer is reflecting on our conversation, I want to make sure that they remember that. So how do I consistently, several times, remind them of this? That's overall. And then, specifically, like, look to be concise, look to speak in star format if you can, right? Like, I start, like, tell them what you'll tell them, tell them that you told them, things like that. Make it easy for an interviewer to tell your story, I think essentially is the tagline here. It's a person who will know you for 45 minutes, who will do their best to understand you and make their job as easy as it can for them.
Excellent. So the only other like big piece of advice I have for Duke Fuqua, if you're applying, is to definitely engage with their admissions committee, attend their events. They're very personal. They have like a email address that you can send questions to and they respond. I mean, I think that they're one of the most um accessible admissions committees, that it's not like, oh, because of the high volume of calls, we're not able to speak with you right now. That kind of thing. So, and then you can also connect with ambassadors, as well as, going to visit the campus. I know that's hard for a lot of people who are international, but I definitely think that there's ways to make that connection and determine if this is the right fit for you. All right. I don't know if we have any other questions. So I'll kind of close with this. Thank you, Anastasia. I love getting to talk with you and get to hear all of your experiences. It's always fun. So thank you again for joining us and answering a lot of questions. And if you guys have questions about Duke or any other school or MBA admissions, or you want a profile evaluation, my contact information is here. I'm always excited to talk to new people and chat about profiles and MBAs, also specialized masters or PhD programs, that kind of stuff too. But yeah. All right. Well, I think that that's all. Oh, sorry, Anastasia. I think I cut you off, hon.
Oh, no, I was just saying thank you. Thanks for having me. It was a pleasure.
Excellent. All right. Well, thanks, everyone. Give us a like and share. Bye.
Bye.